Welcome, beautiful people, to Camp Koji. My name is Joel. Thank you for joining me as I break down the biggest gaming news from the week that was on the only podcast you will ever need. Now, in today's show, we're going to talk about the upcoming Handheld wars, and we're going to finish it up by talking a bit about Marvel Rivals. Not too much to talk about this week. There wasn't any crazy stories last week, but I wanted to quickly touch on this story from last week where Blizzard requested that GOG delist the original Warcraft 1 and 2 now that the remasters have been released. The games will be pulled from sale on December 13th. GOG has confirmed that since both games are part of their preservation program, they will be supported for the foreseeable future. Quote, this means that owners of those titles can still expect a seamless experience and tech support for those titles. This also considers potential changes in Windows OS that may impact games' playability. If you want to pick up Warcraft 1 and 2 bundle from GOG before it's delisted from December 13th, you can use the discount code MakeWarcraftLiveForever, all one word, to knock $2 off. And I want to quickly touch on this for two reasons. And number one being it's becoming very annoying when publishers decide to remaster a game and then immediately following the remaster, they take out the old versions. I'm definitely not a fan of that. I think that if they think that they're doing it for consumer protection, like, hey, I don't want my consumer to search up for Warcraft 1 and 2, find the old version, pay for it, and then find out that there was a newer version. That's easy. Just a simple, warning or something on the store page that lets people know, like, hey, there's an updated, remastered version of this game found here. But other times it's done pretty expressly maliciously, which is like what Rockstar did with the Grand Theft Auto Trilogy Edition, where they released their Trilogy Definitive Edition. And then they, before it was even released, it was after it was announced, they delisted Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and San Andreas from Steam. And I understand why Rockstar did it. I think for them it's really more of a profitability. Like, hey, I want people buying the new version, not buying the old version. But obviously for the sake of preservation, it's not really a good thing to do. Even if this Warcraft 1 and 2 remaster is just about bumping the visuals, it still is going up against preservation, where there's nothing wrong with fans who are playing the remaster. Maybe it's something like 10 years from now, someone's going to go into the store and find the remaster. If out of curiosity, they want to play the original to compare the two, why not make something like that available? This is what a lot of people mean in terms of one way that's always imperative to combat piracy is to offer a better solution. When you do some things like this, which is remaster a game, and then immediately decide to delist the old versions of that game, all you're doing is encouraging people to pirate and step into that world instead of just leaving it sort of as is. The other reason why I wanted to touch on this was because of this preservation program. And now this is something that I've spoken about in the past when talking about Xbox and my theory of them moving towards, or they should be moving towards, trying to make a software distribution alternative. They just started letting people stream their own games, which is a good positive. So when I talk about that, they need to get to a point where when someone is thinking of buying a game, they buy it on Xbox instead of buying it through Steam or buying it on PlayStation, for example, because the Xbox digital version affords them extra perks. So right now, a perk of buying a game through Xbox is that if you're into cloud streaming, if you're a Game Pass Ultimate subscriber, now you're able to stream that on PCs, laptops, TVs, Fire Sticks, whatever. Maybe you're going on the road and you want to continue playing Indiana Jones. I don't know if Indy Jones is going to be part of that program. I'm not sure. I think they would have to add it. But let's say you're going on the road and you want to play Indiana Jones at a hotel. Make sure that they have Wi-Fi available. You could just take your Fire Stick with you, and that Indiana Jones save just carries over. Very different than if you just bought Indiana Jones on PC through Steam, for example. You wouldn't have access to that feature. What GOG is doing with Preservation Program is a great example of that, where now if you're on you say to yourself, hey, I want to play one of these older titles. One example that I had brought up was SWAT. I remember they had I saw in the trailer that they put out, they had SWAT 4 listed, which is a game I used to play the brakes off of when it came out on PC. There is an incentive now that GOG is offering that if I'm comparing SWAT 4 and GOG versus SWAT 4 on Steam, the GOG version has perks. The GOG version, for example, is DRM free, right? So I actually I have closer ownership to the game than I do with Steam. The other thing that they have over at GOG with SWAT 4 now is that I know that if Windows 12 for whatever reason does something and it breaks SWAT 4 on Steam, and that company that made it is no longer supporting it, now you're kind of effed, basically. I know that with GOG, because it's part of the preservation program, they're going to keep updating it. This is a great example of what I'm talking about, that Xbox needs to do more. Is they need to create a system where their digital version is better than the Steam digital version. This is why I talked about doing things like, allowing the buying and selling or swapping of licenses, for example. Or it could be something like this, making a commitment that, hey, if you buy this list of original Xbox games, let's say, for example, Red Dead Redemption, right? Red Dead Redemption is backwards compatible on Xbox 360. What if that continues until the next Xbox? And they say, like, yeah, so games like Red Dead Redemption, if for whatever reason in the future anything happens, we're going to support it. We're going to make sure that it works, even if Rockstar is not there to do it. That gives the consumer more confidence to buy the digital version from you rather than from your competitors. So that was the other reason why I wanted to bring that up. And that kind of segues into our next story, which is talking about Handheld. So according to Bloomberg, Sony Interactive Entertainment is in the early stages of developing a handheld device, which is still years away from a potential release. Now, this is not really this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, given two things. Number one, the current landscape of the gaming market, and number two, the success of PlayStation Portal. Let's be honest, no one, including Sony themselves, thought that PlayStation Portal was going to be this successful. I think a lot of us really laughed at the design of it. A lot of us laughed at the fact that it was an accessory, it was useless on its own. And, very recently they announced that they were going to add cloud into it, which I'm still kind of baffled as to why they never mentioned it until they added it. It makes me think that maybe it was something that they weren't confident they'd be able to actually get running smoothly. But no one really predicted how well PlayStation Portal was going to do. I believe now going into December, it still remains the best-selling accessory of the year. It's probably going to end the year as the best-selling accessory for PlayStation, and it sold so much hardware for them at a pretty healthy price point. So to them, I think internally, once you saw those numbers beginning to explode, they just went, wait a minute, maybe we really underestimated how many people are actually in the market for a handheld. And it's kind of weird because we really don't have a lot of numbers exactly as to how well this hardware sector is doing. Obviously, we've seen what Nintendo was able to do with the Switch, but Valve has not released any official numbers for Steam Deck, so we don't know exactly how well that's been doing. We know that it's in the multi-millions. One data point that we got from them was that they have sold millions, but they haven't expressly said exactly how many millions Steam Deck has sold. But look, it's no surprise right now that Sony is also looking into creating their own handheld. But this makes the next few years very, very interesting for so many reasons, because now we're going to have multiple handhelds on the market, and for the first time ever, we're going to see the big three, each of them have their own handheld, right? So we have the Nintendo Switch. We're going to have whatever PlayStation's Portable is going to be called. Maybe I just call it PSP again. Why not? And then you have Xbox also confirming that they're making a handheld. And then Outside of that, you have Steam Decks, you have the Asus ROG, you have the Lenovo's. There's so many companies that are trying to get into this. I thought it'd be kind of interesting to think about what something like that is going to look like. A lot of this rumor that came from Bloomberg is claiming that it's going to play games at the level of PlayStation 5. That's something, honestly, I'll believe it when I see it. That's not something that doesn't sound very, very easy to execute. I'd be very curious to see how they would do something like that. I think what's interesting about this is that this essentially, in a sense, it does give Xbox a bit of a leg up, or should be giving them a leg up in terms of developing this hardware, just because they have the Xbox Series S. And because the Xbox Series S is a weaker version of the Xbox Series X, whatever the handheld is, it's probably going to be closer to Xbox Series S, which should make it a lot easier for that to be compatible with every single Xbox game already on the market, because every game is optimized to work on S and X. It gives them sort of a bit of a slight advantage in terms of timeline. The chances are that Xbox, whoever this portable Xbox is, they'll probably be out on the market before the next PlayStation. But then that also means that whatever PlayStation is looking at for PlayStation 6, I think what they're going to be going for is that there's going to be PlayStation 6, and then whatever this portable is going to be their S. Whatever their Series S is going to be. I'm also curious if something like PSSR would be capable in something like a handheld. I'm sure that's probably something that they're thinking about. But I think what one interesting thing about this is, Xbox has, on paper, a bit of an advantage in the handheld market in terms of selling hardware. For a few reasons, but there's a reason why I say only paper. I would never sit down and say, I don't think if I think if I put a PlayStation handheld versus the Xbox One, the PlayStation One loses. I don't think that. I think anyone would be kind of crazy to say that, because Xbox just hasn't been executing well for quite some time now. So I don't think I'd go that far as to put something like that forth, but I think where Xbox has an advantage over PlayStation is obviously, number one, is their architecture, the way that they have it built for games to be able to play anywhere. Number two would be that they would be more open to make their hardware open. PlayStation definitely wouldn't even entertain the idea of allowing a competing storefront to be on their piece of hardware. I think Xbox would be one that I think they would be open to putting a light version of Windows OS on there and allowing Steam to live on there. That's another distinct advantage that an Xbox handheld would do, which is, once again, if you're going to look with a light Windows version, maybe that means that handheld Xbox can also double as a portable PC in similar fashion that the Steam Deck does. So I think all those things do give them a bit of a distinct advantage of a PlayStation. The other thing is that if they were to be open to allow a storefront like Steam to exist on whatever this Xbox hardware is going to be, then that means that piece of hardware that you buy from Xbox, not only will you have your native Xbox games on there, but you'll also have access to Steam Deck, and by proxy, you'd also have access to PlayStation games, because PlayStation's PC pipeline is not going anywhere anytime soon. They're going to continue to release games over there on the PC. So it's kind of the best of all worlds, because I just feel like Xbox's issue right now is that they've put themselves in such a weird position where it's like, if you create a handheld and you don't put Steam on it, you have to make a really, really compelling argument as to why a consumer would buy your device versus buying a Steam Deck. Because when I buy a Steam Deck, I have access to the Xbox games. So there goes you have no advantage, right? Unless Xbox decides to make a change and now Xbox games become truly Xbox exclusive again, which I just don't ever see them doing ever. When I have a Steam Deck, I have access to all Xbox games. So if you do a piece of dedicated handheld hardware, what is the advantage of me buying the Xbox versus the Steam Deck? And I think that that's a question that they're probably going to be asking themselves, is that if you're a consumer, those are the questions that you're going to ask. So do you as Xbox sort of preempt that thought process and say, okay, you know what, let's just let Steam in here? And then I think that's when you get to this other conversation, which I've talked about before, which is that if I own a device, whether it's PC, whether it's handheld, whether it's the next Xbox, TV, plug into TV type of hardware, if you start going down that path of allowing Steam onto your device, what are you doing so that if a consumer is introduced with those two options on the same piece of hardware, they're picking Xbox over Steam? I think that that's the answer that Xbox needs to get to. It's going to be a difficult one especially because it's going to be very, very difficult to pry away Steam consumers away from that platform, which is why I keep talking about that anytime an industry goes predominantly digital, whether it's music, whether it's movies, TV shows, you're going to have sort of this influx of new consumers, and those new consumers are going to try to find the most convenient option. A lot of people forget that it's like Steam is just PC only, right? You still have a lot of people that are exclusively sort of in the console space. How do you sell to them to let them know, like, look, if you got a piece of hardware and you have access to these major storefronts, this is why you should choose our storefront versus our competitor. The advantage that PlayStation will always have, and it's kind of the only advantage that they have right now, is the software that they make. Same thing with Nintendo. What sells Nintendo Switches is the Nintendo software, and they're not going multi-platform anytime soon. If you look at PlayStation, what really sells PlayStation hardware is that exclusive software. The problem, though, is that PlayStation has shown that they are open to shrinking the window between PC release and PlayStation release. I think the shortest we've seen it was, I think, either 12 to 14 months or something like that. I think 14 months was the shortest window that we saw. Some of the remasters they put out were 4 months. Obviously, there's been some games that have been day and date. I think that PlayStation reached the same conclusion as Xbox. The difference, though, is that PlayStation could afford to wait. They knew that this was coming. Trust me, when PlayStation 5 was first being constructed, they knew that at some point we might have to start looking at PC the same way that Xbox is doing it. The only reason why Xbox went to PC first, they like to sell the story. They tell people like, oh, it's about giving consumers choice and blah, 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 blah. No, it really wasn't that. It was because their hardware was suffering, and the only way to keep everything going and keep it alive is to put your software into more places. That's really the only alternative that you have, and that's what Xbox decided to do. So PlayStation reached the same conclusion when they understand, like, look, these costs are starting to balloon. There's only so much we can do to attract people to come into PlayStation. I think it's time that we go where they already are, and that is PC. In other instances is Nintendo Switch. We saw that recently with Lego Horizon Adventure. That's not going to stop. When this next Switch comes out, I guarantee that PlayStation is looking at games that they have internally that would work well on a Nintendo device. I guarantee it. I don't think that PlayStation has closed any of those doors, because once again, it's almost like there's always going to be a ceiling to the amount of people that are going to buy a PlayStation. There's always going to be a ceiling to something like that. And I think that that's the way that Xbox looks at it, is like there's always going to be a ceiling to how many people are going to be willing to buy an Xbox. And now that ceiling at Xbox is shorter than ever, because there really aren't many great reasons to buy Xbox, especially if you're into or if you're willing to enter into the PC gaming sphere, or even when you think about this explosion of PC portable hardware, not just Steam Deck, but the Lenovo, and the Asus ROG, those systems are capable of playing those games that are made by Xbox and Xbox Game Studios. The interesting thing now with all these handhelds beginning to come to market is that Nintendo finally has some actual competition. And Nintendo Switch at one point, part of its success was it stood alone. It really was kind of the only device where it really felt like you were getting the experience that you would have at home, you would get it on the road. Right? It kind of stood alone there. Now, Steam Deck sort of kicked that door open, and now we've seen so many other companies kind of, begin to sort of fly through it. And now you're talking about your two main competitors. One of them is about to re-enter the handheld market, which was PlayStation. And then you have Xbox. The difference, though, with PlayStation now versus PlayStation then is that PlayStation had their teams split, right? They always had people making games for either their home consoles, whether it's PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4, or they had their teams creating stuff for the PlayStation Portable, the PlayStation Vita. Now those teams aren't split up. So that's the biggest issue of PlayStation. PlayStation is really bad at creating hardware and supporting that new piece of hardware outside of their main bread and butter console, home console, right? They can't really walk and chew gum. Like we've seen it with PSP and PlayStation Vita, where it's not like, I don't think anyone can say that the first party support was absolutely horrible, but it kind of did pale in comparison to the support that we were seeing for their home consoles. And now they're not going to have that problem now, right? Because theoretically what's going to happen is that whatever games that they create, so let's say Spider-Man 3, for example, it means that when that game is being built, there's going to be a version built that is going to work exclusively on whatever this PlayStation Portable is going to be. They're not going to have to split their team. So this isn't something where Nintendo can say, they were nothing when it came to the DS and 3DS. Like we beat the brakes off the PSP and the PlayStation Vita. The game has changed. The game is not the same anymore, because now not only are you going to have competition from PlayStation, but now you're talking about competition from Xbox, Steam Deck, and all these other third-party hardware manufacturers that are coming out and are making really, really great solid devices. And they're going to run and look better than whatever you're able to put on your device. So I think that's kind of the most interesting thing of all this. Everyone's talking about PlayStation versus Xbox. I'm sitting here thinking about, well, what about Nintendo now? And it also brings up a few things. Number one, it once again kind of goes back to the intelligence of Nintendo as a company to diversify their company. So not everything is just about the video games. Now they're diversifying into films, into the amusement park. They got the museum. Now they're, lifestyle peripherals like, the alarm clock and stuff like that. Like I was talking about, I could see them making a watch at some point. To see them diversify as a company right now, right? Going into the release of this next Switch, it shows how much smarter it was in hindsight to do that, because I just don't see this next Switch being as successful as what this current Switch is, just simply because now they're up against a lot of competition. And the thing about it is that gap between that third-party gap will forever exist for Nintendo, because they're not interested in having the latest and greatest hardware out there. Like, do I first see this new Switch has something similar to like PlayStation's PSSR type of technology? No, I just kind of don't foresee something like that happening. Everyone's been talking about that the power of this device is probably going to be closer to PlayStation 4, Xbox One. Obviously, we don't really know exactly what that's going to be. But that also brings me to probably one of the oldest theories that I have on the podcast, which is I still kind of believe that Nintendo's next handheld is just going to be a new Nintendo Switch. I don't think it's going to be something drastically crazy different. I've been talking about this for probably 3 years now on this show. And what's interesting is that this year has given us our biggest clue as to that's what's about to happen. And the biggest clue we've had has been Nintendo's aggression against piracy this year. This year alone, they shut down Ryujinx, they shut down Yuzu, they subpoenaed GitHub in order to try to get a bunch of forks down, right? They went after Dolphin. They went after, I think, even Citra, which was it was a 3DS emulator, if I'm not mistaken. They're going after, they went after like that modding website. I forgot what that modding hardware or something like that. Last week, we learned that they asked a U.S. district court to subpoena business records from various firms in order to identify alleged pirates, and they're particularly targeting a subreddit called Switch Pirates, which I believe has over 100,000 users. What Nintendo has been doing has been pretty aggressive. I think there was one instance where they sort of went after, I don't know, they copyright struck a few, I think, YouTube channels in terms that were talking about emulation and piracy and stuff like that. I mean, there's something there, right? Like we've seen, Nintendo throughout the years kind of, go out and be very anti-piracy, but they've been almost in a sense unusually aggressive this year. And I think that the reason why is because this new Nintendo Switch has a very familiar architecture to the current Switch, which means that Nintendo is afraid that it wouldn't be much long. Like if you take two teams like the Ryujinx and the Yuzu team, if we don't shut them down now, when we release this new system, which is rumored to be out in March 2025, this is a rumor right now. Rumor is saying it's going to get revealed in January, released in March. There were two separate rumors about that. But I think Nintendo's like, if we release this in March 2025, these guys might crack it in, a few months, this brand new piece of hardware that we have out there. And the thing about it is that if we don't, the other part about it is that if we don't stop them now, we're going to, lose sales of even our evergreen titles because this new piece of hardware has been confirmed to be backwards compatible. But I feel like that sort of has begun to solidify my theory that this is just essentially a new Nintendo Switch, more so than anything else out there. I definitely don't see them naming it anything else. I think Nintendo learned their lesson when it came to the Wii U. I don't think it's going to be Switch something else. I think it's either going to be new Nintendo Switch or Nintendo Switch 2, which it just sounds so unlike Nintendo to do, which is why I don't believe it will be that. And I think the impact is going to be for the first few years that there are going to be games that are going to be releasing on both pieces of hardware. And you'll just kind of get the enhanced version on the new Nintendo Switch. But look, this is going to be interesting over the next few years to see exactly where handheld gaming goes, especially with how sophisticated mobile is getting with iPhones and the newer Androids, where there are some Androids that can play Switch games, for example. Like they're getting really, really good. So it's just going to be kind of amazing to see how much competition is going to go forward with gaming and handhelds. So our final story is Marvel Rivals. I felt like this week there wasn't that many big news stories last week, so I wanted to quickly talk about Rivals, which comes out this week, and address people talking about how they believe that this game is going to be the Overwatch killer. Now, I have been playing Overwatch since the original's beta. I still play the game from time to time. I don't play it as much as I used to, but I still play it. But I played a lot of Rivals during the alpha and during the beta. I played a lot of the game. So I wanted to go over 4 reasons why this game will be successful, and then 2 concerns that I have with the game. And I want to start with something very simple that Overwatch doesn't do, that they should do, and it's something that Rivals does, that for casual players is not going to matter, but for people who are really into competitive players, or competitive games, it's going to be. So number one is actually data. So this is something that they recently revealed about Marvel Rivals, which is that they are going to release data for every single hero in the game, including win rates and pick rates. Now, this is something that, particularly with win rates and pick rates, is hidden from the Overwatch community. The only time that the Overwatch community officially knows about win rates and pick rates, because there are some tools out there that can kind of give you a little bit of a picture. But the only way that Overwatch players officially know win rates and pick rates is if Blizzard releases them. So from time to time, when they make a balance change, they'll sometimes say, hey, we noticed the pick rate of this character has gone up. Or when they buff them, they'll sort of put that out into the community and say, like, hey, we saw this character's pick rate go up, which accomplished what they were trying to do. Or they notice, like, hey, you know what, the pick rate of and the win rate of this character is a little bit too high, which means that they might be overpowered. So once they nerf them, they'll sort of bring that up and say, like, yeah, you know, the pick rate. If the community is talking about a particular character either being overpowered or underpowered, they would sometimes volunteer their information and say, well, actually, the pick rate for that character is not really too high. So a lot of the data that Overwatch players have, some of it is anecdotal. Some of them will use like the top 500 charts, which shows your top 3 players to showcase, like, look, these are the most effective players. But it's not really it doesn't really give you the whole picture. So it's really interesting to find out that this is something that NetEase wants to do. And the developer diary, I believe it was the second one that they released last week, if I'm not mistaken, they confirmed that they were going to make that public information. That's pretty big. Especially when it comes to win rates and pick rates. So for those that don't know what that means, win rate is very simple. It's the percentage of wins versus losses on a particular hero. So a higher win rate on a hero usually can equate that hero is pretty effective, whether it's whatever role it may be, DPS, healer. Pick rates is how often that character is picked. And then I'm curious if they will also break it down per rank. So if it's gold, what's the highest pick rate on a gold character? What's the lowest one? What's the highest win rate? What's the lowest win rate? I think it's really interesting to be able to have access to that type of data. But the other part of this that I'm still baffled and blown away that Overwatch doesn't do this is that they're going to have official data for each hero. And right now, if you go to the Marvel Rivals website, it's actually already live. So you can pick a particular hero and you can see their statistics. So if I pick Captain America, I can see his base health, his movement speed. But then you can go to each of his attacks. So right now I'm reading up on Sentinel Strike, which is his main left click. And it shows the range, 4 meters. The flying speed of the shield, 60 meters per second. Max flying distance, 25. And then it gives you the damage. Melee attack damage, 40. Flying shield, 45. And then it gives you the speed for each hit. So the first hit of melee is 0.4 seconds. Second hit is 0.5. First flying shield is 0.5. 0.57 seconds. It tells you if you can critical hit with it. It says no. So critical hit would be something like a headshot would be a critical hit. It tells you if it has a special effect, automatically target enemies near the crosshair. I'm blown away that Overwatch doesn't have this. And I think what's worse is that it doesn't affect a person like me as much, a person that's been playing since launch. Because if you've been playing since launch, you sort of have a bit of a feel of buffs and nerfs and when things go up and down and what, base damage is for melee or the base damage for your attack and things like that. But, to retain all this information is kind of insane. So for you to have an official access to this stuff is really good. I'm curious if this is going to be in-game. Right now, it's just on a website. I'm hoping that they actually put this in-game. And I'm going to assume that this is going to also be updated. So when they buff or nerf a character, these numbers will begin to change. But it's good to show even small things like different effects that you might not know that a hero has um, during casting different abilities, or or extra things that you might not know about ultimates and things like that. I don't remember what's the name of the ultimate in this game. I just know I know it's called the Q. It's a Q button, same thing as Overwatch, but I don't know if it's called ultimate or not. So I'll show you exactly how something works. So if I go on Adam Warlock and I go to Karmic Revival, if I go to special effect, it says revive allies within range, centered on Adam, continuously monitor for fallen allies within this range. If they enter the area, they can be revived at the casting location. So that's a lot of information, which is like, yeah, that might be too much if you're just kind of trying to teach someone the ability, but it gives you all the information you need to understand, okay, how exactly does this ultimate work, this whole revive ultimate thing. And that was one thing I found out as I was playing the game. Like, okay, if I use his ultimate, it actually, while it's being casted for the entire duration, I can actually revive people with it, as long as they're within the bubble of their death. I thought that was really cool. So this is going to be good for a lot of new players, but it's also going to be important a year from now, because that's one thing that you'll notice if you play a lot of Overwatch, is that a hero, the way that they are now, is almost, sometimes it's nothing like they were just a few years ago. Sombra is a good example of that. Symmetra is another good example of these characters that have gone through so many changes throughout the years. Torbjorn is another one. So it's good to always know that if there's a new player that enters the game a year from now, they'll have access to the information to better help them understand the damage, or what damage fall off is, where it's at. Is it 20 meters? Is it 40 meters? So I think it's helpful for new players, but I will say for new and returning competitive players alike, for you to understand exactly how your hero works. And for people that are into competitive games, that's imperative, especially for something like a hero shooter. Do my attacks have something like fall off? Okay, if it does have fall off, when does it begin to fall off? Like that was one thing that I found out when I went into this data. That one of the characters that I used the most during the alpha and the beta was Luna Snow. And I found out that, hey, she does have the damage fall off. Well, where does the damage fall off start? It actually begins to start at 40 meters. I don't remember exactly. I'll have to go back and look at it. But I think they said it starts at about 40 meters is her damage fall off. Let me see. Yeah, fall off begins at 20 meters, decreasing to 60% at 40 meters, which means that when you're at 40 meters with this character, that attack, which is supposed to be 20 damage per round, a total of 60 damage because she throws out 3 spikes, that damage decreases by 60%. So that's a pretty significant difference. So if you're into competitive play for this game, it's good to know, hey, this character that I'm using a lot, I know that I need to be at somewhat within 20 meters of my enemy when I'm attacking them. That's when I'm most effective with her. So that's one thing I'm going to give them a huge plus on, that Overwatch doesn't do, which they absolutely should do. And then the fact that they're talking about that they're going to start sharing win and pick rate. They did say that that's not going to be available at launch, but that's pretty exciting to find out from the developers. That means that they're really into making this game serious, or as serious as they can get it. Number 2 reason why I think Rivals is going to succeed. The game is pretty polished and feature rich at launch. Now, this is something that I noticed when I was playing the alpha in May, where I was really blown away by how well the game worked, even in an alpha. That to me, it genuinely blew my mind. How fast the matchmaking was. I mean, it was like blazing speed when you match up. And I think part of the advantage that they have versus a game like Overwatch is there is no roll lock. So I think that does lend to shorter queue times. For those that don't know, roll lock basically means in a game like this where you have multiple roles, so you have DPS, tank, and healer which I believe tank is called Vanguard in this game, DPS is called Duelist, and healer support is called Strategist, I think is the name of it. But I don't like those terms. No one likes those terms at Marvel Rivals. Everyone just calls them DPS, tank, healer, or support. So one thing that I noticed was that there is no role lock. So in Overwatch, where you're playing competitive or quick play, you can enter what's called role lock, which means that you only have 2 of each: 2 healers, 2 tanks, 2 support. The problem with that is that if you have more people wanting to play a role than games that you're trying to set up, that role is going to be increased. So like over the last year or so, my healer queue has really risen in Overwatch. Where if I want to play a quick play, sometimes I have to wait like 4 minutes, which is annoying, which means that a lot of times I play open queue because I get into games in less than 60 seconds. For this game, there is no role queue as far as we know, and they haven't, as far as I know, they haven't announced actually adding a role queue. But the fact that the matchmaking was so quick, the game ran pretty well. I think it definitely improved from alpha to beta. I think the biggest improvements that I remember seeing was the tick rate definitely improved a lot. Characters like Spider-Man, for example, were really a lot tougher in the alpha because when he moved, you can clearly see like frame skipping. I remember Doctor Strange's portal, which I still think is one of the most magical development tools I think I've ever seen in a video game, like literally ever that I've ever seen, like literally. For Doctor Strange's portal to work the way it works in this video game is like magic, because the portal isn't just like a circle that you step through. It's a circle that you can look through in real time, attack to, jump in, jump out of. It's pretty crazy to see how well it works. In the alpha, it sucked. When you cast it on the alpha, your frames dropped to like 10 frames, and it was literally everybody's. Like it didn't happen if you were Doctor Strange. Everybody's frames went down when a portal was opened. But they fixed it for the closed beta. There was a little bit of a frame rate drop, but it was almost minuscule. I'm sure by the time it launches, it's going to be almost perfect. But to see how polished the game is pretty phenomenal. The fact that the game, when I played it in alpha, already had a setup for competitive. It already had a pretty cool system. It had things like degradation. It had in the beta they introduced competitive bans, which is something that Overwatch had experimented with at one point, but the bans were done by the company. So I think it was like once a week. In competitive mode, there will be like 4 heroes that you couldn't pick. In this game, though, it's a player-picked ban. So if the majority of players agree that Spider-Man is banned and maybe Loki is banned, then neither team can use that character. And I think it's only 1 ban per round, just to not be like super oppressive. And it's funny because everyone has talked about that they would definitely 100% ban Spider-Man. Spider-Man was definitely too overpowered in the beta and in the alpha. But the fact that they have that, they have tournament, they have all these different ways to customize, even your home screen, you can put your favorite hero on the background. Obviously they had the different skins, the battle pass, everything just felt so ready to ship. They had multiple modes. You had your quick play, you had your competitive mode, you had your different ranks, the bronze, the silver, the gold, and everything above that. I don't remember what the names were. I like that they had the levels, so it's gold 1, 2, 3. It just is extremely well polished, which is something I would never expect. When this game was first announced, like I remember it leaked, and I think it was announced like a week after the leak. When they said NetEase, I was just like, oh, so this is probably gonna be like a cell phone game or something like that. So I was genuinely blown away. Like when you play, I will say, there's something still kind of jank about the game. I don't know if jank's the right word. I still think that the game overall is missing sort of a bit of weight to it. I think it has a lack of weight. I think it felt better in the beta than the alpha. But overall, I think that the reason why the game is built like this is I do believe there is a mobile version probably in the works. So when you play the game, you can see that it would translate probably pretty well for a mobile game. But it's a pretty polished game. And I think when you look at the art style of the game, which is the thing that a lot of people have been talking about, I mean, it's really phenomenal what they've been able to do to take characters that people have known for years, for decades, and be able to take them, bring them into a new medium like a video game, and keep so much of what those makes those characters great, whether it's Spider-Man or Iron Man or whatever, but really make them your own. So like this Iron Man feels like it's Iron Man from Marvel Rivals. Same thing with Spider-Man. I think Spider-Man is a great example because we've seen Spider-Man in so many different iterations, whether it's the comic book, whether it's animated, whether it's the films with the MCU films, or even before with Tobey Maguire, and then we've seen them in different video games, whether it's Ultimate Alliance or very lately with the PlayStation Spider-Man games. So for Spider-Man to be in this game and it feels like it's their own Spider-Man, even with the same voice actor, Yuri doing, he's the same voice actor from PlayStation's Spider-Man 1 and 2. He's doing the voice also for Spider-Man Marvel Rivals. It still feels like their own version of Spider-Man. And a lot of it starts with the design of that character. And everyone is so well designed. And the art style is insane. Like there's so many small details, whether it's like, when you're in the hero select and, you see the almost like I don't remember what the name of that effect is, but you kind of see the picture and the character sort of moving. And then you click on it. It's this cool little intro of the character coming in. Like you could tell they put so much, not just work from an employment stand of view, but so much of an investment. Like you could tell that NetEase and Marvel invested a lot of money into this game, that this team was really given the bank and the time to execute the vision that they wanted. And you see that a lot in the way that the menu is constructed, the UI of the menu. You see a lot in the trailers that they released. The launch trailer is just phenomenally done. It's just so well polished. The third thing that I like about this game that I think is going to lend well to success is that fun comes first. This is one of those games that I think you probably heard the same from a lot of people that have been playing it, which is that the balanced philosophy of the game is if everyone is broken, no one is broken, which is kind of like an interesting aspect of the video game, which kind of sounds a little bit weird, but to a sense, there's so many moments in the game and some abilities that just feel like very fundamentally broken, but there are so many characters that are capable of it that it sort of drives this, it almost like drives the balancing of the game itself. And I like it because the game started with giving characters that freedom where no one really feels like they were cut off at the knees in order to balance the game. I think a perfect example I would like to use is someone like Iron Man, for example, who can stay in the air infinitely. Storm is another character that can stay in the air infinitely. And I think that there are a lot of developers out there that would treat Iron Man very much like Overwatch treats Pharah, which is Pharah is not allowed to fly forever. She has a boost. You can sort of manage it in a sense to almost make it feel like she's floating forever, but for the most part, you're going to land from time to time. You're not really meant to be in the air forever. But Iron Man can do that. Not only that, but Iron Man has like this full maneuverability where if you're really getting beat down, the controls work really well to get you be able to fly in and out of spaces, and I think that that's something that a lot of developers would not allow. They would say, no, we can't do that. That's a bit too much. Spider-Man is another one where I think what makes Spider-Man so frustrating, which is why I say he is kind of an unbalanced character, is that he can basically delete you in like 2 seconds. He is kind of fundamentally broken. And the problem with him is that he can drop into like your back line. he can stay on a wall forever. So he can stick up on a wall, wait for your team to pass by. There's no cooldown for something like that. He can drop down, delete your support, and then just swing away. And when he swings, he's one of the fastest characters. Good luck hitting Spider-Man while he's swinging in this video game. It really does feel like, man, this feels very unbalanced and broken. But it's almost like that's what led the development team. What led them is, I need to feel like this hero. And it does feel like Spider-Man. He's so fast. He's fast and he's strong. And that's what Spider-Man is supposed to be. And I think they did that also with Hulk more in the beta than the alpha. In the alpha, Hulk was almost useless. In the beta, he felt a little bit more like Hulk. Like if he jumps into you, you're gonna get into a lot of trouble very, very quickly. Same thing with a character like Thor that they introduced in the beta. If he gets close to you, he can delete you pretty quickly, especially if your team's not paying attention. So I think that's what I liked about this game, is that it's almost like the fun and ensuring that you are feeling like these heroes kind of came before a lot of things. It even came before the balancing of the game. That I actually do like. The fourth reason, I guess the fourth and last reason why I think this game is going to be successful is its biggest advantage, which is the Marvel license. So Rivals is going to launch with an insane 33 heroes, which I when I first played the alpha and I saw how many heroes they have, I was like, wow, this is actually a lot to start off with. I think Overwatch started with like 12 or something like that. It was kind of an insanely small amount. Let me see if I could go real quick and see how many heroes Overwatch launched with. Overwatch launched with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I was right. They launched with just 12 heroes. These people are launching with 33 heroes. So the list is Adam Warlock, Black Panther, Black Widow, Captain America, Cloak and Dagger, which looks like they both work as one character, which I think sounds cool. They haven't actually shown how they work, though. Doctor Strange, Groot, Hawkeye, Hela, Hulk, Iron Fist, Iron Man, Jeff the Land Shark, Loki, Luna Snow, Magic, Magneto, Mantis, Moon Knight, Namor, Penny Parker, Psylocke, Rocket Raccoon, Scarlet Witch, Spider-Man, Squirrel Girl, Star-Lord, Storm, The Punisher, Thor, Venom, Winter Soldier, and finally Wolverine. 33 total heroes. Absolutely insane amount of heroes to introduce into the game at launch. And what's interesting is that 6 heroes are left on what we call the leak list. There was a leak, it was probably even like around the alpha that came out that showed every character in the game. So far, a lot of them have been confirmed, especially last week because they added 5 characters last week, like Squirrel Girl, Iron Fist. So these 6 heroes were on that original leak list, which was Blade, the Fantastic Four, so that's Human Torch, Invisible Woman, Mr. Fantastic, The Thing, and then Ultron. So once those 6 heroes are added, which theoretically they're going to be added next year, that will bring the total up to 39. Currently, Overwatch has 42 heroes, and that includes Hazard, who's releasing next month. Now, Overwatch, they normally release 3 heroes per year, which means that happens again in 2025. By the end of 2025, they'll be at 45. It's highly likely that Marvel Rivals will be up to 39 at the end of 2025, which means that they will only be 6 heroes away from reaching Overwatch's entire staff or entire lineup. This is a distinct advantage that Overwatch does not have, which is that the hardest part of creating a hero is creating the hero. The thing about Marvel Rivals is that more than half the work is done, right? So if they say to themselves, I think we want to add this character, so many things instantly happen the moment that you pick a character, right? So let's look at a character like Deadpool, right? If they say to themselves like, yeah, I want to add Deadpool into the game, naturally you're already probably looking at a duelist, a DPS. And then you already know that it's going to be a character that uses guns. He's also capable of melee because he does historically use swords. But then now you're talking about, okay, obviously his passive should be self-healing. He should be able to heal himself. I'm sure that Wolverine in this game is probably going to have the same passive. They haven't confirmed that yet. And then from there, you kind of already have a good idea of what his moveset could be and how he's going to play. And then the same goes for any character, whether that's Cyclops or any other Marvel character that you can think of. The moment you make the decision of, okay, I want to add them into the game, you kind of already know what they're probably going to be capable of. So even if you look at something like the Fantastic Four, you already know with Human Torch, he's probably obviously going to be able to fly around. You have, something like the Thing. Obviously, he's going to be really strong. He's probably already instantly, that's going to be a tank. There's no other way around it. Invisible Woman will probably naturally fit into a support role. Maybe she can give people shields and stuff like that. Mr. Fantastic is another one that I could see going to a tank or a duelist role. Like maybe he could make himself, you could stretch yourself out really big in order to block bullets or something like that. Or it'd be kind of cool if Mr. Fantastic had an ability similar to Lifeweaver. So Lifeweaver in Overwatch, he can pull you away. So maybe he has something like that where he can stretch his hand out and pull back a teammate away from danger or something like that. So look at that. Like more than half of your work is done the moment you choose a character. It's very different for Overwatch, right? For Overwatch, you're starting from complete scratch, right, in order to create a character. That's why it can take years to create a single hero. The fact that for Marvel Rivals, they decided to launch with 33 heroes means that they're putting a lot of money into heroes. That's going to be the bread and butter. They probably understand, just the same way that Overwatch does, that when your game goes into a little bit of a lull, like the player count is kind of going a little bit low, maybe players are trying other games, the way to bring them back almost instantly is to introduce a new hero. And what's interesting with this is that Overwatch can only do it 3 times a year. If they go with this of these 6 characters dropping next year, even if it's just those 6, you can do 2 characters. Well, not 2 characters per quarter, but almost 2 characters a quarter. It's pretty crazy. The other thing is that also lends itself, once again, to the maps. When you're creating a map on a game like Overwatch, you're starting from scratch. When you're creating a map for this game, for Marvel, you already have these locations already exist in the world. Like it'd be cool to have a level takes place on, or a map taking place on nowhere from the Guardians of the Galaxy, for example. Like there's so much they can do. I love the map that they introduced here where it takes place on, I don't remember the exact name of the location, but it was like a Venom planet, and then you can shoot the symbiote and then makes bridges and it knocks down walls. I think that's really, really creative. I think that's really cool. But yeah, the Marvel license is the biggest boon that this game has, because you instantly get people attached to the game. The moment this game would show up, everyone's like, wow, this looks incredible. I want to play. And the reason why is because they want to play as Spider-Man, as Iron Man, as Wolverine, as Groot, as Doctor Strange. It's such a distinct advantage that they have that Overwatch is going to really, really struggle with. Because once again, Overwatch can only create 3 heroes per year. The fact that you save so much time prototyping a character here, that you can release characters almost boom, 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 very rapid fire. And the fact that they are launching with 33 means that they feel really confident that they can probably keep up with a minimum 6 heroes per year. And once you think about it, when you think about Marvel, you're talking about hundreds, actually not even thousands of characters. Like there are characters that a lot of casual people like myself, I consider myself a comic casual because I don't really read too many comic books. You can introduce a character like Jeff the Land Shark, and I'm sitting there like, who the hell is Jeff the Land Shark? I have no idea who this person is, and create a pretty interesting character out of him. The other advantage that they have is that they can introduce actually, no, I'll talk about that in my problem section. So to wrap that up, these are the 2 issues that I think that the game currently has. Number 1 is too many duelists, so too many DPS. So since the beta, they've announced 10 new heroes since the closed beta. 6 of those are DPS. One is a Vanguard tank, and the other three, which are Wolverine, Cloak and Dagger, and Black Widow, are rumored to be one of each. So the rumor is that Wolverine is going to be a tank, Cloak and Dagger is going to be support, healer, and then Black Widow is going to be another DPS. That's way too many. If you combine tanks and healers together, there's still more DPS than both of those roles combined. This is an issue that I believe Overwatch has, that if you're playing a DPS, there's just more variety. There's more variety for different situations for you to figure out how to get out of something. Whereas with Overwatch, it's just not that simple. The problem that Overwatch has, though, is that it's very difficult for them to catch up in terms of like both of those roles, because once again, they can only really create 3 heroes per year. And the only reason why the support has gotten so a lot bigger in Overwatch was because in Overwatch 2, they released 3 new healers into that role. So they really focus on like, wow, there's really not that many healers. We have to go into this. That's an issue that I think that this game now has. And what's interesting is that they don't really need to do that. There's one thing that I think that this game does really well that Overwatch kind of struggles with, is that this game has found a way to make any role fun. And 2 things are happening. Number 1 is the fact that there is no role queue. And I think number 2 is the fact that a lot of tanks are just fun to use. In Overwatch, playing tank is not fun. This game has been put together in a way where it feels fun to play a tank like Venom, or play a tank like even something like Groot. But when you look at a character like Captain America, which I think, like, when you think about Captain America, I think you easily, first of all, you think of him as like a DPS role because he's not like super huge, but he works really well in the tank role. You put that beside Thor, and then now the rumor is that Wolverine is going to be on there. It's 2 things happening. It's number 1, the way that the character is, actually a few things. It's number 1, the way the character is built. Number 2, the fact that there is no role lock. And then number 3, the fact that you have the heroes themselves. You want to play as Wolverine. You want to play as Captain America. So it makes it a lot easier to convince people to play tank. Whereas in a game like Overwatch, it's very hard to convince people to play tank, especially in Overwatch 2, because you only have 1 tank if you're playing in role queue, and it just makes the game not fun because everyone is hyper focusing on you. It just doesn't make the game very, very fun. The other problem that this game has is balancing. There were so many moments that I played this game where I thought to myself, I don't think I'd play this more than Overwatch, because I felt like Overwatch took itself seriously. And it's like, I like that about Overwatch. I want my competition. When I played Marvel Rivals, it just didn't feel that way. Remember what I said before, which is like fun comes first. But I think that that's not just a positive. There's also a negative attached to it. But it's also kind of hard to tell how they're going to go about balancing this game, because during both of the tests, there were really no mid balances, right? They added Jet the Landshark and Thor in the middle of the closed beta, but there were no balance changes made, which I think is fine. I think that makes sense, right? The point of the beta is to focus on feedback, actionable feedback that you can implement into the game when it launches, and then to test servers, right? That's the point of that, of those tests. So I don't know exactly how they're going to handle balancing, but there are a lot of characters in the game that were unbalanced. Hela was severely unbalanced in the alpha. She was brought back a little bit better in the beta, but still, in a sense, she still feels a little bit, just a tad too overpowered. Spider-Man and Venom were overpowered in the beta, especially after they added their team-up ability. That team-up gives Spider-Man an ability, or it allows Spider-Man to delete almost any support in the game, and even some DPSs, that if he lands behind you and he tags you, uppercuts you, and then follows it up with a melee, you are deleted. You are done. I remember they added something to him where if you're using Iron Man and he zips to you, he shuts your suit down. I remember it was like the most annoying thing I think I ever saw. It was one of those things where it's like, if you're playing Iron Man and you see Spider-Man swinging towards you, you just had to fly away, because if he touches you, you're done. There was nothing you can do. So I think balancing in the game is sort of an issue, but then at the same time, I don't know how big of an issue is going to be, because it could be different. It could be something that they are going to be actively balancing the game. I think that's one thing that Overwatch really sucks at. I think they don't do enough balancing. Sometimes a character it remains unbalanced for over a month and people get frustrated and they leave the game. So I'm hoping that, like I remember in the alpha, Groot was annoying because his walls will regenerate almost instantly. So you put up a wall that gets knocked down, you just put up another one, just put up another one. They balanced it a bit more in the beta. But something like that, where when I was playing the alpha, anytime Groot was on the field, even if it was our Groot, but especially if each team had a Groot, the game was just so boring. It was just balls all over the place. And you would hear in the voice chat, people would be typing and agreeing, like, this is so boring fighting against Groot. So it's so important in these games to consistently balance it, because people, when you make a game free to play, what you need to understand is that since people didn't pay to play it, it's going to be so much quicker for them to put it down and just go back to Apex, go to Fortnite, go to Overwatch. So that's why it's so imperative that through balancing, you make sure that no one's too overpowered, that the game still feels fun at any level in which you play it. The other problem, or I don't think it's not a problem for me, but I know it's going to be a problem for a lot of people, is what does the monetization look like for this game? Now, they did confirm, and it was a smart idea, every hero from now and forever is going to be free to play. You don't have to pay or play to unlock a new hero. Overwatch 2 is like that now. Overwatch 2 was not like that at launch. At launch, new heroes were hidden behind the battle pass. They changed it. So it was really smart to do that, because the way that I look at it is if you're only monetizing through skins, that's the way that you're going to monetize your game. You're better off increasing the potential pool of customers that you have. So if I have a bunch of customers that can't even access Wolverine in order to pay for the Wolverine skin, I'm just losing money. So it makes sense that all these heroes are available at launch. Number one, we don't know what the price of the skins is going to be. My guess is going to be $20 to $24 per skin, because that's really the main way that they're going to monetize this, and it's going to be lucrative for them. I mean, there's a lot of skins. Like right now, they announced one of Magneto's skins, and it is the classic, that purple and ruby suit. It's not the exact same design. It still is like the new Magneto design, but in purple and ruby. And I'm like, yeah, that thing's going to sell out like crazy. Wolverine, his base skin, I think it's awful. I think he looks like a Street Fighter guest character. I think it really doesn't. I don't really like it. I don't think it really fits. He has like a W belt buckle. It's just awful. I think it's awful. That's a skin that I feel like all they have to do is give him the yellow and blue suit with the mask, and that's going to sell like crazy. And then you think about all these different suits from all these different comics. They're talking about some of these characters have been around for decades. You have decades of suits to dip into. The amount of money that this game can potentially make is insane, especially it being third person, which means that when someone buys the skin, they see the skin 100% of the time. I'm sure that was a motivator to put this game into third person. But we don't know what the price of the skins is going to be. I don't think it's going to be less than $20 per skin. I personally don't see anything wrong with that. They need to make money. I don't care. I legitimately do not care what my hero looks like. I personally don't foresee myself ever buying any skins. Maybe I'll buy a battle pass here and there. So we don't know what the battle pass is going to look like. We don't know what those rewards are going to be. Are the free ones compelling? I'm curious as to what that's going to look like. But I think that they have access to a monetization option that almost no other hero shooter can pull off. And it's something I have brought up on the show when I talked about Marvel Rivals early in the year, which is that if I'm them, I'm introducing variants. If you were to do variants for each of these heroes and sell those at like $30 maybe you could go as crazy as to go $40 a pop. My God, think about how much money they can make. So it's basically Iron Man, but when you pay that 30, you get War Machine. And it's a similar silhouette, but it's the same exact move set. Maybe some of the colors or sounds are different. And it's the voice of Rhodey instead of the voice of Stark. Same thing with Black Panther, Killmonger, Hulk, Red Hulk. How many different ones are there on here? Agent instead of Captain America. Man, this is probably almost unlimited when you look at this list. I'm trying to find another one, but you understand what I'm saying. Like there really are a lot of possibilities when it comes to that. Like let Spider-Man give him a symbiote suit where it's not just a black suit, it's actual symbiote. You actually visually see it on his suit. There's so much they can do here to monetize this game. It's pretty insane when you really think about it. And but I'm very curious as to what that monetization is going to look like. The advantage that they have over a game like Overwatch is that this game can be single-handedly fueled by skin sales. Single-handedly. Overwatch can't do it single-handedly. That's why they have the battle pass and the weapons and stuff like that they're doing now and all this different garbage that they try to attach to it. This game can live and thrive solely off of skins. 100% off of skins. I'm just hopeful that they don't do what Overwatch does, which is Overwatch only gives skins to like 6 people, because Overwatch is very profit driven now. It's very much like, I'm not going to spend a year and all this money making a skin if no one's picking this character. So if no one's picking this character and I make a skin, there's a much lower ceiling to how much money I can make. And I think that the one thing I noticed about this video game is that it never really felt like someone was overpicked when I was playing alpha and beta. I remember in the alpha, Black Panther was never picked because he was horrible. In the alpha, he was actually a lot better. Sorry, in the beta, he was a lot better. But it never felt like someone was never, ever picked, which I think is good. It means that they, made it in a way where almost like if you have a favorite hero, you're going to like the way that their hero plays. I think they did a good job with their abilities. But we're not have to wait long because this game is right around the corner. Hot releases for the week, December 5th, we have Delta Force coming to PC, Fantasian Neo Dimension, PC, PS4, PS5, Switch, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, Infinity Nikki, Android, iOS, PC, PS4, PS5, and UFL, PS5, Xbox Series X. We also have December 6th, Path of Exile 2. That's entering early access. PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X. And finally, Marvel Rivals, PC, PS5, Xbox Series X. Time for us to wrap it up. These are stories that we didn't have time to get to. Tencent announced a survival game called Light of Mortaram that was pretty shamelessly ripping off of Sony's Horizon series. This probably is one of the most shameless ripoffs I think we've ever seen. I'll be honest, this is one that I just don't see Sony not suing. It really is that obvious. Like with Power World, it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, some of the hero designs. But for this game, it's like the key art, the trailer, the design of almost every character, the concept of the game. It's pretty insane how much they took from Horizon to the point that I guarantee you Sony's getting their lawyers together. It's just a bit too egregious. But this Tencent is basically doing what Power World did, which is you're taking an IP that is very familiar. Remember, whether you like or hate Horizon, that game has sold over 30 million copies. It's a pretty popular game. And you're getting people talking about the game because it looks so much like Horizon. Then you look at the game and it's nothing like Horizon, right? It's exactly like Power World. You drew people into the game because it looked like Pokemon, but then you played the game and I was like, okay, this is nothing like Pokemon. The reason why this will never see the success of Power World, though, is that, Power World was like, hey, what if Pokemon had guns and it was like a fully 3D world, which is something Pokemon has never done. In this game, it's like Horizon has a 3D World. It looks phenomenal. So I don't see much crossover happening here. Insider Gaming leaked an upcoming Ubisoft game codenamed Altera, which they claim is an Animal Crossing-inspired social sim that will see players inhabit a home island that will consist of interactable NPCs named Matterlings. Just pack it up, Ubisoft. Just stop. Seriously, just stop. Stop trying to be like everyone else and do your own thing. It's just not going. Even on paper, I know it's not going to work. I don't even have to see it. Known Mortal Kombat 1 leaker Fate Unknown has claimed on Reddit that future Mortal Kombat 1 content has been canceled due to poor sales of the latest Chaos Reigns expansion. Now, I had no idea that Mortal Kombat was doing this bad until like early in the year. So many people kept talking about how Mortal Kombat just really sucked and how they dropped the ball. And apparently, I had asked someone on Twitter, and they were saying it was because of story changes, lack of customization. They said that the cameos were unbalanced, that the DLC was too expensive. It was a lot. And I was surprised to see how much NetherRealm has dropped the ball. And yeah, this basically probably just means that they're probably just going to go more all in into Injustice, because that's probably going to be their next game. And finally, No Man's Sky has finally reached very positive on Steam reviews 8 years after its awful launch. Never, ever give up. It's still pretty crazy how these guys were able to do this. And then just the simple fact that, I'll be honest, they did not have to do this. Pretty much every update that they released has never been sold, which I still think is phenomenally insane. And they did this all while keeping the game at full price and not really going too crazy on like microtransactions and stuff like that. It's pretty noble and commendable what they were able to accomplish. Shout out of the week goes to Sony. They updated their hardware numbers to celebrate the brand's 30th anniversary and revealed PlayStation 2 has sold 160 million units, furthering its lead as gaming history's best-selling console. Also, shout out to Mr. Shuhei Yoshida. The PlayStation veteran announced that he was leaving the company after 31 years and has confirmed that he will remain in the industry. Make sure to subscribe to Camp Kojo on your favorite podcast platform so you can listen to it on the go. If you already are, please leave us a review. It helps more than you know it. Thank you so much for joining me. Please follow us on YouTube at Camp Kojo for future updates. Once again, I'm Joel, and I will see you all next week.